Hey Tara, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Appreciate that.
Hi, Bart. Are you hearing me now?
Much better.
Okay, good. Wi-Fi channels make a difference. So.
Okay, very good. Stephanie, do we have our first item?
Yes, we do.
Okay, well, we'll call to order the regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee, Wednesday, October 14th meeting. The first item that we're going to be doing is a city one, so I won't read the little preamble explaining what the Design Review Subcommittee does until we do the second item. We have some minutes to approve. Michael and Jen, do you have any revisions or a motion to approve?
I have no revision.
I have no revisions. How about you, Michael? We lost Mike. Michael, you're on mute. Well, we're still losing your audio, Mike. Stephanie, is it best for him at that point then to just call in, possibly, and forget the video?
Yes, he's welcome to call in.
Yeah, I think he's welcome to both call in through his phone as well as use the Zoom application, and hopefully one of those audio features work. Yeah, Commissioner Blackwell, I'm going to just email you the phone number so that you can call in because we're not able to hear you right now.
We can try this one more time.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Well, I'm on my last. This is my last chance here to make this work from where I am. So let me know if you cannot hear me.
We can hear you pretty well.
Okay, great.
We are at approval of minutes, and wanted to find out if you had any revisions to the minutes or a motion to approve.
I have no revisions requested here. No.
So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of citizen comment and minutes of the regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee, September 9, 2020.
Do we have a second, Michael?
I'll second that.
Okay. We'll take a vote. Jen?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I approve, so it passes unanimously. And before we start the first item, Jennifer, could you introduce us to the other members that are listening in to the meeting other than the Design Review Subcommittee members?
Sorry about that, I was on mute. I think we can introduce those additional members as each item does come up. So we have 2 staff members for the next item, and I'll go ahead and let the presenter, Chris Tanio, our associate engineer, introduce the other members that are participating on the Zoom meeting just for that item.
Okay, very good. So we will, we have the first item, 2A, park monument sign replacements, a request from the engineering division to determine whether proposed park monument signs exhibits are consistent with the city's Wayfair finding sign program.
Hi, yes, good afternoon. My name is Chris Tanio. Yeah, I'm the associate engineer with the San Clemente Public Works Department. Nice to meet you guys.
Nice meeting you.
And I have also joining with me today Ziad Mazboudi, Deputy Director of Public Works with the City of San Clemente. Whenever you guys are ready, I just kind of quickly go over this item.
We are ready. You can make your presentation.
Okay, very good. So for this item, I'll be going over the request to determine that these new park monument sign exhibits are consistent with the city's wayfinding sign program. And just a little background history on the wayfinding sign program. In February 2010, there's a council approved the master wayfinding sign program with the overall goal to create a uniform sign program that reflects the San Clemente city's Spanish Village by the Sea character. Also, as part of the fiscal year 18-19 adopted budget, the Park Monument Signs Capital Improvement Project was approved as part of the budget, which included to remove and replace park monument signs throughout the city of San Clemente. It is also the Beaches, Parks, and Recreation Department's desire that the new sign styles for these park monument signs be similar to what's installed currently at the Vista Hermosa Sports Park for the monument sign there, with the size depending on the various site conditions. And they'd be essentially broken down to the small, medium, and large templates as shown in attachment 1. The city's consultant, Michael Baker International, prepared these new exhibits reflecting these 3 sizes. There are some slight deviations between the new exhibits and the ones shown in the wayfinding sign program. The main difference being that the new exhibits have a symmetrical design, whereas the ones in the wayfinding sign program are not symmetrical. The remaining features are similar in that there's the use of the red brick tile, the white stucco face, and the dimensional lettering. Furthermore, it's noted in the wayfinding sign program that it's only to be used as a guidance and not as a mandatory guideline. And additionally, in attachment 2, on October 24th, 2016, the item for the Holy Hanson Beach Club monument sign design was noted in DRSC minutes that the wayfinding sign designs don't need to be applied to all the signs. And so based on all the above kind of criteria I've laid out, staff believes that the new exhibits are consistent with the wayfinding sign program, and we're recommending that the DRSC provide feedback that these new exhibits are consistent with the wayfinding sign program. That concludes my presentation, and then I'll leave it up to any questions and feedback that you can provide. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. We will, do we have some questions for staff? I do have one comment on the Uli Hansen sign. I think that comment was intended to reflect the historic building and the fact that it may be appropriate for some historic structures, et cetera, to deviate somewhat from the Wayfair finding sign program. So I don't think that's a intention for every single sign having the ability to be different than the Wayfair program. Jen, do you have any questions for staff?
Well, I wish I have this master sign program in front of me. I know how this asymmetrical sign look like, but just to make it more complete in the future, I hope that those exhibits can be included in the package. So
yeah, I apologize.
Who reads it,
that wayfinding sign program style. It's the asymmetrical kind of wave pattern style that you see on the typical ones that are installed on the mast arms at the signals or throughout the city.
Right. One question is, what font are we using on this new monument bridge?
A font hasn't really been provided. I kind of leave it at the discretion of the committee to provide feedback on the type of font. We didn't specify a font for these signs, so.
But you showed us the design. The design used a certain font, right?
Yeah, right now it's shown as Times Roman.
Is it Times Roman?
Yeah, that's what.
Okay.
Does it say it's Times Roman?
It doesn't say it, but that's what's displayed.
Okay. Well, a lot of signs they look a little similar. Okay.
Michael, do you have any questions?
I do. I was going to ask you about the font as well, and it seems reading through the report there's an intent to standardize the monuments, right? So we're emulating what was done at Vista Hermosa Park, and so I'd assume that the font type would be consistent with that citywide, as well as the lighting. The details, the brick cap, the stucco finish, and the overall look. From one location to another, I mean, we could probably change fonts, but I don't see why we would do that. So whatever is at the Vista Hermosa Park, I would suggest we just stick with that, and just have that sort of standard throughout the city for every monument that we install. Can we talk more about the lighting and the back treatments? It looks like the back is going to be a stucco finish, but in some cases we'll need to address the aesthetic from the back. Maybe the placement creates more visibility to the back, maybe coming down a hill or approaching from another direction. Has staff thought about installing plant material or lighting on the back? Is there any sort of discussion on different options for lighting on the front?
There hasn't been discussion on lighting or landscaping. It was just for the sign styles in particular.
Okay.
On a park by park basis, that could be considered based on the stakeholder requests to include uplighting or landscaping or planting material.
Okay, and then the lighting and the fonts. The font that is used at the Vista Hermosa Park, what is that? At the sports park?
So, I don't have that information, the font that's being used at Vista Hermosa Sports Park. But the material that was given to me, it was the plans that were constructed for the monument sign at Vista Hermosa Sports Park. These were basically kind of used that as a template, and we didn't state the type of font being used on there when we kind of utilized that design template from the sports park monument sign.
Commissioner Blackwell and just all the commissioners, I am going to email you a link to the Master Wayfinding Sign Program just so that you have it for reference. But it does look like, in terms of the font that was used for the Vista Hermosa Sports Park, it looks like it was Gaudi Bold.
Okay. Well, I'm confident that there was a lot of thought that went into that. The byproduct is a good one. It really looks nice. I think it is successful from a distance. It's readable, it's simple, and it's very stylish. And I think it has a sort of a classic look that would stand the test of time. So for the other design review subcommittee members, I would just throw that out there as something to embrace. If we're going to look for a standard, we should pick a font. I don't know that is, that Gaudi font is the ideal font, but it's already been utilized and it works. It looks good. I see it every day, multiple times a day, and I've seen it at night.
Let's do this under discussion.
Yeah,
do you have
absolutely.
a question for staff?
Yeah, one more question. The San Clemente, the city logo has a relatively large dimension, while the stucco face is curved. I just want to make sure that there is a way to attach the logo to the stucco face without leaving a gap on the side. In other words, you may fit the logo onto the curved face, or if it's flat at a certain dimension, you will start looking at something on the side, like a gap. I guess it shouldn't be a problem because you can just caulk it with the same color as the stucco.
Are you saying to minimize the gap between the logo and the stucco finish? Or?
Well, I don't know. What is how do you fix those letters to the stucco face? It's not pin mounted. It looks like it's just attached with some adhesive, right?
Yeah, it looks like it would be like bonded through some kind of like a mortar or like a cement adhesive type of material to do that. But yeah, that could be done that way to minimize any gaps that may result. Trying to.
I have no more questions. Thank you.
Okay, so let's close the presentation portion, open it to public comment. Was any public comment received, Stephanie, on this item?
No public comments were received on this item.
Very good. We will open it up now for discussion. I'll start. If we're tasked with saying this is consistent with the program, I have to say I don't believe that these documents are. The delineations don't really show us what the brick is actually doing. It's just a texture that's thrown on there, and it's not a representation of what's going on. We don't have the right font. I don't believe. I don't think this represents the city Spanish Village by the Sea intention. We do have some very historic parks in town that I want to make sure the signs are relatively period correct. And I don't think these look very contemporary. It's got a contemporary font. Our general intention as far as city signages, earth tones, my personal preference would be a bronze or brown type style rather than black. I feel there ought to, also if we're trying to get a template here, since we don't know each location that they're going to be put in, it's going to be hard to address landscaping on it. But I don't get a feel right now from what I'm looking at. If this was presented by an applicant in a gateway area, would I approve this sign as being appropriate for our Spanish Village by the Sea? I would have to say no. I don't believe it is. I don't think we'd approve one like this for a applicant to use on a shopping center or whatnot. So I want to hear discussion from both Michael and Jen on what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I kind of agree with you. It has a modern look. It uses good quality materials. However, it doesn't have that Spanish Village by the Sea flavor. So, on the red bricks are used on some Moorish architecture, but it's not. And if you want to find a most typical material to use as a cap, then you would use a red tile instead of a brick. Brick's not unique to Spain, while the red tile is more common. And then the font size, Bart already talked about that. I don't know if Spanish colonial architecture or Spanish architecture in general has a specific font that's related to it. But I've seen some font size that just feels better and feels more compatible than a typical standard normal serif font like Times New Roman.
I would agree with that. Michael, do you have any comment on that?
I do. So just to be clear, it's my understanding that we're looking at these monuments for application at public properties, correct? Like parks, public facilities, et cetera, not for commercial or any sort of private endeavors. Okay.
So this needs to represent our city.
Yeah. I think we could dig pretty deep on, what is, what level of detail and even the font would be appropriate. That's more of that in and of itself could be a full workshop on what font looks best. So my comment earlier during staff presentation was really more of a, I like something that, Commissioner Wu said, and there's a modern feel. I like modern, but I also like, I like that consistency as well. I don't think we need to go as authentic as we may be feeling we need to. I mean, if we're going to do, a tile topping with some clay mortar packing, I mean, how deep are we going to go into this thing? I kind of like what's at Vista Hermosa Sports Park. It is a little cleaner. When you look at it, I don't know if you think Spanish colonial, but I certainly wouldn't think any other style. If somebody just say, do you think that's more modernish or some other architectural style, I would definitely, connect that dot to Spanish colonial if that was one of the choices in a multiple choice. So I'm just thinking we've done some energy has been invested there. The Target, I know it's not a public facility, but the Target Center across the street gets close to that, so there's some continuity in that experience. The aesthetic character is there, and there's a contiguous sort of a feeling. I don't feel there's a complete disconnect with signage styles. Should that model be applied citywide? I think yes. And so what are we going to do? We have our largest draw in the city. We have what was intended to be a semi-regional or a regional sports park. So we've got a draw into our city. This is our newest park. It's where the most energy has been spent in money, in time, in design. and we have this sort of, you know, the standard that's there. So what do? Are we gonna go back and fix that sign so it matches some other design? I think staff has presented something that's consistent with that. You know, the font type, I am indifferent on that. I think it should be readable. It should be clean. It shouldn't be whimsical. It should be serious and readable and stylish looking. I like what Vista Hermosa Sports Park has done. I think it works. Readability is important. I don't get a feeling for any sort of architectural style when I look at it. The treatments, really what I see is a color from a distance. You cannot read the texture. If it's smooth, if it's rough, you just can't read it from a distance. Our eyes, those on this call here, may be able to look at it and know that it's not rough stucco, but to most people, whether it's rough or smooth, I don't think is a big deal to me. It's the color and the shape, the style, the cap color. I'm okay with what staff has presented. I am most interested in standardization globally, if you will, whether it be what we already have at Vista Hermosa Sports Park or some variation. But I think, you know, if we're going to do that, we should go back retroactively and start to address all of the parks so that there is some continuity. That's my take. In the landscaping piece, it's going to be a case-by-case basis. I was thinking about the back areas to hide, folks to put junk, plant material that could overwhelm or hide or screen, obstruct line of sight to the monument. Those are all things that would be considered on a case-by-case basis by staff, I'm sure. I just asked because I was wondering what was happening on the back of these monuments, because they're going to make a statement. Lighting on the back can change the character of it. Lighting on the front, most important part. Again, the continuity there is important. We should do it the same way. We're not doing backlit, pin-mounted applications here, but the way we illuminate the signage should also be consistent, because at night or during those times of the year when it gets darker early and there's still folks using the properties, the lighting is going to be important, and it's going to, if we're going to go the distance on discussion on, the aesthetic component of it, that should be considered as well. And there should be consistency there citywide. Those are my thoughts on it.
Okay, I will try to state my concern.
Chair Crandall, quick question. Would it be helpful to be able to share an excerpt of the master wayfinding sign program on the screen, just for the benefit of the public, since that program wasn't included within the DRSC report?
I would be very welcome to that. But
okay.
I do want to say that
Yes.
The city has a purpose in calling itself the Spanish Village by the Sea. Our vision subcommittee, our general plan, specific plans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I just feel that anytime we put the city seal on signage, we have to hold ourselves to the highest standards that we would hold any of the public applicants to on a sign. And I don't feel this represents the vision or quality that we would require from applicants.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very concerned about that. These are just, I mean, I don't want to say this is a poor design. It's just a very minimal. It's just a billboard to me. It shows no concern about what we're all about. And thank you, Stephanie. If you can look at, the public can look at these signs. You can see upper left, there's a font style. It's very relaxed. It's very comfortable, rather than such a rigid solution as the Times Roman bold that we have here.
Mm-hmm.
And we're earth tones on the browns and all the colors. That's why I'm thinking that that would be appropriate. So I can't really say that this what's in front of us today is consistent with this. Does it have to be? It's an arrival point rather than a directional sign. But those are my concerns. I think more time has to be spent on this.
Mr. Crandall, may I add a couple of comments? Can you hear me, first of all?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I think the purpose of this project is we have some signs in the city that are in really bad shape, and we needed to replace them. So we took the Vista Hermosa project, the sign that's on it, as kind of a reference point. As far as the font, no problem. I actually agree, and I had made the comments about the fonts. We'll take whatever font is at Vista Hermosa and we'll apply it to all of them. Our goal was to come up with a design, and we chose the large, medium, and small based on location, based on the size of the park. For example, the Vista Hermosa Park is extra large, actually. So what you see here as large is not the regional park size monument. So the large is for locations where they are larger. I think the purpose of this is, one, the concept. We wanted to hear from the committee. Do you like having us have the large, medium, and small and apply uniformity, consistency, like Commissioner Blackwell said? You know, we wanted to have something that's easy so that we're not going back and forth continuously and spending money on design and taking time, because we have money to replace signs and we wanted to proceed. So we welcome your comments. I mean, we can work with the planning staff. We can revise this and then ask the designer to put a specific font, and we can have him show, you know, the font that Vista Hermosa. That's not a problem at all. I think right now they put this and then we implemented it. As far as lighting, I'm not sure that all of the parks have lighting. If they do, we'll implement some consistent lighting solution. That's, as you guys said, we'll apply it consistently throughout. This project also does not include landscaping at all. This is just a sign replacement program. We're demolishing an existing sign and putting a new sign instead. If the committee or the planning commission or, you know, anybody suggests, that is something we can put in the budget in future years and specifically address a landscaping project around the sign, near the sign, etc. This is purely a sign replacement project that was budgeted by the city council. So we're trying to say, well, is the concept good? Do you like? I mean, we chose brick because brick may be easy to apply. As far as your comments regarding historic parks or locations that are historic of nature, we can actually, if you guys want, exclude those, and we can say if a park that's being proposed has some historic value, we'll look at it separate. I don't believe any of the parks we're looking at right now, and Chris can confirm, are of historic nature, and we should have, and we could send you a map that shows the location of the parks we're addressing.
The parks are shown on the first page of attachment 1, all the different parks and then all the sign sizes we're proposing to use at those park locations.
Okay.
So,
So if you gentlemen can look at that, then
I'm not opposed to the varying sign sizes. That's quite all right. The fact that they're arced and small walls, that's perfectly fine. In the past,
I see on page E1 it lists the park's location and the size.
Yeah, that's fine. And I do agree with Michael that uniformity would make replacing signs in the future much easier. I agree with that. I just want to make sure that I think some more architectural design work needs to be done on these plans to really give the flavor of the city.
Okay. I mean, if you have suggestions, we're happy to take them, and then we can revise. So we're not married to this. We're presenting a concept we believe would work.
The basic concept of the signs and all, that's fine. But if you drive the city and look at all the signs that have been put up for developments, for the shopping centers, not every case is a good example, but you look at them and you say, okay, that belongs in this town. This could be in pretty much anywhere USA.
Yeah, Commissioner Crandall, if I may, just to insert this, it sounds like staff is open to suggestions and proactive, and perhaps there's some comfort with budget behind that statement. I would just, if that's the case, I would say that, yeah, to be consistent, we go with the bronze backlit, pin-mounted backlit illumination. That's our standard with other projects, and if we can get it, that's ideal. And I wholeheartedly agree in your statement about, consistency. If we're going to, have such a standard for applicants coming in on private development, why aren't we? And this goes back to the, the whole lighting discussion. Some may be familiar with that, where we were talking about the dark skies ordinance. Well, if we're going to start to apply, why aren't we looking at our own properties and holding that standard? So, that's a work in progress. But I wanted to just connect that to an energy that should be there, and it's it is a responsibility that we have at this point. If there's an opportunity, especially budgetary, I would say yes. Let's go back and maybe even rethink Vista Hermosa. The standard is.
I don't think Vista Hermosa really falls into. That's not even one of the ones we're looking at right at the moment.
This is a city standard, correct?
It is a standard, but we've got an awful lot that need to be done before Vista Hermosa gets redone. That's a new sign.
Okay.
We've got some little tiny parks. We've got big parks. We've got them all over the city. This is an opportunity to do it right. And I just want to make sure we do it right and don't. And good design doesn't necessarily cost any more to build. It's just,
True.
Should it have pilasters on either side? That's one look that, if you look at the wayfaring signs, there's a pilaster on one side. Those are more playful signs than I think we need to do. But we don't want, this is a tough one because we don't want to design it for the applicant, but we are the applicant. So it's a little different situation.
And if I may add something. So
Sure.
As far as the budgetary, I don't have major budget for architectural design. We took something, we have budget for construction.
I know, and I think that shows. So we have to figure out.
True. So here's what I propose, and Mr. Crandall, what you just said, we are the applicant, and this commission we're seeking maybe assistance. So if you have signs you like, or if you can point to certain features you'd like us to look into, then we can tell. The company that did this is more of a structural company than an architectural company, and we thought by picking a recent sign like Vista Hermosa, we're pretty much going along some of your wishes, as in my mind, you guys have reviewed that sign and blessed it, you or the previous commissioners. So we looked first at a couple of locations. We looked at, what's the sign, the Jim, what's that one called, Chris? The Jim Patterson, is it? Park. That one has also, a big sign. And then, so we looked at a couple of signs, and then we felt like this sign, covers some of the features that we saw at Vista Hermosa. If there are features in it that you hate, tell us, then we can give specific instructions such as change this, do that, etc. Just right now, I can't spend a lot of thousands of dollars to have the architect go through a lot of iterations. So when we talked about budget, we do have some budget restrictions, but at the same time, I agree with you. I mean, we're doing this, we're going to apply it across the board to all the parks. So we want something that shows the image of the city, and that once people start seeing it throughout, they're happy to see something that reflects on the image and the culture of the city. So I don't disagree at all with this. I just seek your help, and if any of you have some specific comments, provide them to us, and then we'll take this and then we'll make some of these revisions. Or if there are some signs you love, you say, what, this is the best thing, that if our sign looks similar to those features, that would be good. And we can take that advice then and then reflect it and maybe come back and show it to you or talk to the planning staff.
I appreciate this, Jan. Today, I'm not ready to try to design something here, or I think we need some time to research it a little deeper.
Okay.
How would we do that, Stephanie, if we took that approach that, hey, we need to research this? We're going to work as a team with engineering to come up with the solution we have to come up with, or that we think is appropriate for the city. Would we bring it back, or would we, how could we do that in the most expeditious way?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend bringing it back if that's okay with Chris and Ziad's overall schedule. But I do think it would be beneficial to present it to the DRSC again, just to make sure that we're keeping the process very transparent and open. But my question, I guess, to Chris and Ziad is, do you feel that you have enough feedback today to be able to work with your consultant, Michael Baker, to be able to retool the design? Or is there additional, information that you would need to work with the consultants on that regard?
Yeah, I think Stephanie, I'm hearing some of the concerns. Obviously, I'm taking some notes, but I don't know if we can do it like a Zoom work group. I'll be more than happy to listen. And Mr. Crandall, I don't expect any of you to give me today the full answer, but I would like us to work together and hear some of your thoughts, and maybe if, I don't know, in a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, if you guys think that's enough to, whether you take some photos or you have some concepts or ideas, and then we have a work group, we listen to your feedback, then hopefully by then you may have specific features that you can tell us. Now, obviously, I'm also under a budget as to what I construct. I would like the most gold-plated sign, but I want, if the recommendations are fair, then we'll take them, and then I could give specific instructions to the engineer saying, change this, make it like this, let's put the font, let's do this, and then we'll bring it back to you again, and then we'll present it, and hopefully that would reflect kind of some of your wishes, and then we can move on from there.
And I think I can certainly do my homework and get you examples.
That would be great.
And Jen, I see you have comments?
Yeah, I try to give you some specific comments here. So, if you take the asymmetrical Subcommittee on the master wayfinding sign program, the monumentation, and I'm okay with the different size, depending on the scale of a project. I'm okay with creating a symmetrical design for this purpose. So if you just take that, use that as a prototype and make it symmetrical, and then you can decide if you want to pilot on both sides or not. Get rid of that frame made of a brick. If you want, you can put a flat red tile coping on the top. Not sure, but that's okay. And then keep that red base and white stucco, and use the same font of that master sign program image, or use the what do you say, Gaudi? I'm looking at a Gaudi old style that looks better than this New Times Roman. So if you do those things, I think you will be much closer of what I'm looking for. In other words, the city, just like the city wants every public building, anytime it's visible by the public, we want them to be Spanish style, Spanish colonial style. The city needs to hold it at a higher standard. So those signs, whenever possible, we make it a better example of Spanish colonial style signage that can serve as an example for other developments, whether it's a private development or other public development. I would support your sign design if it's a private development, unless it's a historical structure thing. But I think the city can do better. I agree with Bart on that.
Okay, Michael, do you have any comments? I think what we're leaning for is having it worked on a little more in the next week, providing some input probably through Stephanie, so the planning staff sees it first before it goes to engineering. Any photos or examples that we come up with, and then bring it back and we can have a little more detailed discussions than we are today. What do you think, Michael?
I think, yeah, thank you for that. Ziad, I was listening to you, and just to be clear, are you seeking input outside of the design review subcommittee meetings, or at least ahead of time, from members of the committee by way of either some sort of a written description or graphical representations? Are you looking for some of that initially?
Either one. I mean, I'm open to it, and I'm opening the floor here to suggestions. So I'm saying, if you guys would like a working meeting, we'd do that. If you'd like to just forward to Stephanie, some ideas, etc., we'd welcome that. We presented what we thought is something that's workable, but I hear your concerns and your comments, and I respect that. And I'm saying, okay, so why don't you give me a little bit more, so that we can reflect some of your wishes in something else before we come back to you with the revision.
Okay. So I think so, Bart. So I think it sounds like we're free to go ahead and present staff with some ideas individually by email.
I think that would be fine, because when we bring it back to the public meeting, as long as we don't do it together and work together, Stephanie, right. I think the risking some transparency issues if we did that.
Yeah.
We could, if we send it through you to engineering individually, I think we're okay doing that.
Yeah,
okay.
That's definitely the route that I would recommend, just because one thing I would like to add, I definitely hear Ziad's concerns about wanting just to make sure that we're moving it forward and that we're overall meeting the project timeline. But I think the issue with doing a separate working meeting with the DRSE members is that this is considered a Brown Act body, so that anytime we have more than 2 of them on a meeting, that is considered a public meeting, and we would have to notice that and agendize it in advance. So I do prefer the suggestion given by a couple of the committee members to just send your comments and feedback directly to me, and that we planning staff will work with Ziad and Chris to make sure that we incorporate your suggestions into the design. And once those exhibits are able to be revised, then we're happy to present it back to DRSE at a future meeting.
That sounds great. No, yeah, that's great.
I don't mind having a design charrette, and it's a public meeting thing. But I'm more than happy to do it after the beginning of November.
Okay,
but I'm okay with what Stephanie said. I think that's a great, process, and we welcome them. And obviously our planning staff also have a lot of experience in some of the signs that you guys have approved and reviewed for development. So we'll work with staff. We'll take your comments, and then we'll hopefully bring you back something that you'd like.
Thank you very much, and appreciate your hard work on this. And I know you're doing your best to do what's best for the city also.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay. So we will have that come back to us. And it would probably be a couple of weeks at least, Stephanie, so we can get you the information, they can work on it, and so a couple, 3 weeks, I would guess, is probably.
Yeah, yeah. And if anything, if timing is an issue, we can always schedule a special meeting as long as the commissioners are available. We just need to advertise the meeting at least 24 hours in advance.
Okay, very good, very good. Thank you very much. Okay, so we are done with the architectural review on this item. We go to new business. We have none. Old business. We now have the Miramar Event Center and Restaurants applicant initiated modifications to bowling alley, food hall, elevations, Lightfoot, and is Jonathan online already? Hello, Jonathan. Do you think the applicant needs to, or are they fully aware of what the purpose of the subcommittee is?
Bart, I think that would be helpful to read for their knowledge.
Okay, very good. The purpose of this subcommittee is to provide direction, insight, concerns, and options to the applicant on how the project can best comply with the city's design guidelines and/or city policies. The subcommittee is not an approving body. They make recommendations to the Planning Commission, and zoning members will provide input and suggest recommendations to the applicant based on written city design guidelines and/or city policies. The subcommittee will not design the project for the applicant, nor will the members always agree on the best course of action. The applicant can then assess the input, incorporate any changes accordingly, with the understanding that the subcommittee is simply a recommending body. Decisions to approve, deny, or modify a project are made by the Planning Commission, City Council, or the zoning administrator, with input and recommendations from the subcommittee and city staff. The chair of the subcommittee will lead the discussion. Planning staff will be available to provide technical assistance as necessary. Time is limited. Consequently, the design review subcommittee will focus on site and project design rather than land use issues, which are the purview of the Planning Commission, City Council, or the zoning administrator. So we are here to work with the applicant to come up with the best solutions possible to make projects comply, and we're working as a team with the applicant. Jonathan, would you like to introduce your team before you do your presentation?
Certainly. Thank you, Chair Crandall. Good afternoon, Commissioners. As you're aware, the Miramar site was entitled in 2017. The property was sold in December of 2019, and the new ownership group is in the process of seeking building permits to reflect those entitlements. And as Mr. Crandall just referenced, we do have a few members of that team with us, so I'd like to introduce them quickly, and then I'm going to have one of them give a little bit of background on the team. So the first with us is Mo Mutaseb. He's with Fortuitous Partners. We also have James Markham from Big Picture Concepts. He also is a restaurateur and operates the Windmill Food Hall in Carlsbad. And finally, Peter Soderwood with Architects Local. While Peter will be responding to all of the design questions today and kind of leading that part of the interaction, I do want to give Mo an opportunity to provide a brief background on his team and kind of the use vision of the project, even though use is not, again, our focus of the discussion today. Just to give some background, I think is helpful for our committee members to understand where the team is coming from, and then we'll transition into the design pieces. So Mo, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself and just give a quick background on yourself, and then we'll transition to the design.
If you press *6, it should unmute your phone.
We'll give him just a second. I texted the same instructions. If we don't get the unmute to work, then I'll move forward. We'll come back to it. Oh, you know what? It looks like we lost him. So I'm just going to move forward, and we can come back to some background with Mo's team in a minute.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Oh, there we are. Yes, we can.
Hey, sorry about that. I just got your *6 message.
No problem. So, Mo, if you wouldn't mind just giving a quick background on your team.
Sure. First off, thank you all so much for taking the time to review, analyze, and consider our project. I'm joined on the phone by, as Jonathan said, my partner, James Markham, our architect, Peter Soderwood of Architects Local. And together with a few other partners, we own and operate Landmark Food Halls, which is a hospitality company. We have extensive backgrounds creating, growing, and investing in homegrown or local hospitality concepts. Our goal, simply said, in San Clemente is to provide the community with a food hall and event center that the people of San Clemente can take pride in, can celebrate, they can gather and socialize in. Most recently, our team designed and built the Windmill Food Hall in Carlsbad, California, right down the road. We currently own and operate the food hall business inside the iconic Windmill. The Windmill is a historical building. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it, on Palomar Airport Road. And when we undertook that redevelopment, the city of Carlsbad was very strict about not changing the overall aesthetic or the overall legacy of the building. We were able to fully redevelop that Windmill building, created an absolutely gorgeous, exciting food hall that the Carlsbad community is going to be able to enjoy for decades to come. And really, our goal in San Clemente is to do the same thing. So we're fortunate enough to control the Miramar Theater, and we want to convert it into just a beautiful, aesthetically gorgeous, historical entertainment venue for the city.
Thanks, Mo. So moving forward and transitioning to the design piece of our focus today, because the entitlements, I'll move forward this way, because the entitlements were processed under different ownership, which did not have the same level of experience operating a food hall establishment, some revisions are to be expected now that the space is being more fully programmed in detail. Some elements not previously shown on conceptual elevations are unavoidable. For instance, the kitchen vents that are building code required. And without screening the entire barrel roof and increasing the perceived massing, there's no way to make these completely disappear. So that's one piece that we can discuss today. Similarly, multiple pass-through counters were initially shown on the plans. While these can be useful for coffee bar uses, they cannot be used to pass food through from kitchen to customer. That reality has also affected the construction planning. While the entitlements have already been approved, there are some design changes that have resulted from modifications due to this internal programming change. So staff does seek input of design review subcommittee on the proposed modifications. Within your reports, table 1 lists out those different alterations, and the project architect, Peter Soderwood, will be able to respond to any questions on those elements. The project team has indicated that they are ready and willing to make exterior changes so long as there are not major disruptions to their internal tenant programming of the space. Their goal is to retain the tenant usage as much as possible, so avoiding adding, for instance, doors in locations where there is a proposed tenant kitchen. Things of that nature would be difficult to achieve, but other design elements are completely on the table. I do want to remind the project team, as Commissioner Crandall has already read out for us, that this committee cannot design the project for the project team. So the goal here would be to get recommendations from our design team, but then for Peter to come up with potential solutions. And our DRSC members can give their opinion on those potential solutions, but they won't be able to design the project here on site. So that's going to be our approach. That wraps up staff's initial comments and presentation on this item, and I'd love to turn it over now at this point to Commissioner Crandall.
Okay, so are you going to go through each item, or Jen and Michael, are you, I'm sure you read this thing from front to back. Let's go ahead and have Jonathan go through it. The one thing I do want to say is, and I have a question right off the get-go, is we aren't just on commercial buildings looking at the exterior alone. When we went through this project originally, we worked very hard trying to be sensitive to the historical context of, particularly in this case, the bowling alley. And we haven't seen anything yet on sections through the building to see how the trusses, etc., are being utilized and reused, so we can be consistent with historic preservation issues. So keep that in mind on your presentation, that will be a concern also.
Jonathan, this is Zane. It would be nice to see side-by-side comparison of each revision, so everybody's on the same page. And you can elaborate what is the design change and the reading behind it.
Okay, and you know, we do have our IT team does have a copy of the plans that were printed and delivered to the committee members yesterday. So we can pull that up, and maybe what the best approach would be is to have that come up now. Tara, if you wouldn't mind getting that loaded and going to sheet 1 to start. And then I'm hearing a request to move through those different changes that have occurred that are listed in Table 1. So let's start with that, and maybe we can get any feedback on each of those items, and that'll help us hone in on which elements are of particular interest and dive into more detail on those. So the first one on the list is that the approved conceptual plans indicated that on the building addition that faces El Camino Real, there were 2 arches with pass-through counter from an interior bar, and then a separate picture window. And you can see that on the top image here, or sorry, at the bottom here. On the left side of the colored image, you see that there's 2 arches, and then to the right of those 2 arches, a picture window. And that space was initially shown on the conceptual plans as being a bar, and those 2 arched areas were to be passed through windows. And I can provide some initial commentary on part of the change in programming of this space, but then I'll trade over to Peter to add any additional thoughts. So one of the pieces that came after these initial renderings were done that was required by Coastal Commission was the addition of more bicycle racks. And so as you see, as you're looking right at these arched areas, there is a ramp down from the sidewalk on the inside of that wall. And on the other side of that ramp was where the Coastal Commission approved the placement of additional bike racks. So where the preliminary design indicated a pass-through window and then some additional tables, that area is now narrower, so it really functionally will only work for pass-through walking space aside those bicycle racks. So that's one of the pieces that resulted in some translated changes here, but I'll hand it over to Peter to add any additional comments.
Sure, thanks Jonathan, and I'm happy to talk to the DRSC. I chaired a design review board down in my area here for a couple of years, so it's fun to be on the other side of the table and to see my projects get cranked through the ringer. This project, obviously the entitlement documents and drawings, that design, the cart was a couple miles ahead of the horse in terms of actual function and use of the building. We've worked every step of the way on our design with Daniel Convardi, who was the historic architect and design architect of the document you see on the bottom there. So with every change we made, knowing that the floor plan and the programming was being well modified inside to meet functional requirements and the requirements of the client, every change we made, I spoke with Dan to find out, do you think this meets the criteria and the design intent of what actually went through on entitlement. You know, I will point out the renderings that we're looking at are taken from the street. Our actual building elevation, as I'm sure you know, is pretty fictional because you'll never see the north side of the building without all of the site walls, the pergola there, and the fireplace, all of that actually in place. That said, the changes that Jonathan was talking about on the left side here for the addition, circulation moved a lot inside the building, so In the center of the square addition on the left is actually a stairwell. So we wanted to bring some light in there and put a window on that. Flanking on either sides, we wanted to, again, keep that same arched look with a tile inset and actually bring in a large area for some historic photo tiles. Knowing, as Jonathan said, that we've got a space where people may be coming with their bikes, walking onto the site. As I think it's been successful in other places in San Clemente, having some historic photos blown up and put on tile that we can then set right into the building. We want to make sure that we are as respectful as possible to what's been there and what is there now. So as much as we're doing that outside the building, do keep in mind on the inside as well, our interior designer has been doing that as well. So we've got a lot of spots for historic photos inside the building to show what the bowling alley was like, what the buildings around were like, so that the context of our design really fits seamlessly into this very, very special and very important part of San Clemente. So the functional changes that you see here really are program driven. Jonathan and I went through an extensive process going back and forth with the entitlement drawings, and both decided that it made more sense to be honest to what was actually happening inside the building. We did take a stab at basically pasting all the elements that you see now on the north side of the building onto our building, and it really resulted in what I think was a Disneyfication of what was happening there. There were windows that didn't look through because they were on the backside of functional kitchens. There were doors that wouldn't open. So we felt it was much better to, in the words of Dan Conrarty, who is the design architect here, take his kit of parts that he put on this elevation and utilize them to the best function possible. So that's really what you see here on this final element. The bar has moved all the way over to the right side. It's an exterior bar now, which has its own awning and its own tile backdrop. So in whole, we've tried to take the components as well as possible and fit them to the new program. I know it doesn't look exactly the same, but our goal was to be respectful to entitlement and be realistic with the fact that this is a functional building. And there are lots of things that need to function inside and outside of it to make it work. And being honest to that and honest to our clients' needs resulted in the elevation you see on the north side. One thing I will point out about the vents on the roof, that was not shown at the beginning. There's no way that this building would have functioned with any food service without vents on the roof.
We'll come back to that, Peter. That's one of the pieces in the list.
Sure.
So number one, again, being the arch, the difference in the arches, that there's a third added arch here, that the central window gives light to the stairwell that accesses the lower level and restrooms that are directly below this area. And the two rectangular areas that are intended to be historic photo tiles, that's the back of kitchen for two. This one larger bar area was split into two smaller food concepts. And so this would be the back of kitchen for those two elements. So that's what has changed in this space. Tara, if you could jump real quickly to page 5, and then you'll be able to see at the top right of the plan area that stairwell and the two tenant spaces there. And then
while you're on that page and you're talking about the stairwell, the window that's shown on the plan does not match the elevation.
Correct. So given that there was such a wide open elevation at the beginning, one of the things we did do was thicken the north wall. So you'll see how we basically furred out twice that wall to be able to provide blank glass panels that are set in there. They do not pass through, but we felt that the look of that wider window matched better in the arch. And again, it was part of the horse trading of trying to match the entitlement documents and have that crash headlong into the rocks of reality, which is there's not that much space to put 3 wide windows there. There's enough room for 1. So we put 3 wide windows. The one in the middle actually opens and is clear glass straight through. The other 2 are going to be have wall behind them. So they'll be glass but painted out.
Peter, let me confirm that in the 2 arches on both sides, you do have a window there, which is not shown on your floor plan, but it's shown on your elevation is a rectangular window. You do have a window there.
No, that's actually meant to be an inset panel with the historic tile photos. So that is all tile work on the face there.
All tile work, there's no window. So what does that rectangle mean?
That shows the area where we've got decorative tile around, and then that's the field, and then the frame, the white rectangle that you see there is TBD historic photo. So it's going to be historic photo tile.
So tile work around that rectangular historic image or photo or something.
Correct. Yeah. So the whole arch inset is tile, but in the middle there's a tile photo.
Now you also raised the spring points of these arches. So the wall, the portion of the white blank wall becomes a little narrow in height. What is the consideration of that?
Part of it had to do with really the realities of the view from the street. Given that we've got, as you can see on the plane here, we've got this ramp coming up and site walls and taller elements around, we felt that having it so low, it was starting to disappear into the side of it. Because the building is sunk down, if we do an element, we want to make sure that it really works.
What happened to the architectural feature, the horizontal trims at the spring point? Did you remove them?
No, so on our elevation, we're still showing, we're basically building out a small shelf there. Again, in reference to the fact that there was originally shown to be a bar counter there, a pass-through, there still is a counter at the same height. It just doesn't pass through to anything.
I don't see it on the elevation. So, but you say you do have it.
Jen, I'm going to jump in. It's the one at the spring point at the top of the window headers. On the original drawing, there was a horizontal belt mold or whatever.
Yeah, at the same height as the exterior lighting. On the new elevation, they're gone.
Maybe we can go back to the exterior elevations and look at that.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind going back to page 1.
XA311B on the rendering.
The first page, yeah.
Okay, yes. So in that original elevation, there was basically a header on top of that window. We could put that back in if that's really an issue, to have a header in place over the window and the tile. So
no, Peter, we're not talking about the header over the window. We're talking about at the spring point. If you look at the wall in between these two arches, at the spring point, there is a architecture feature, look like a shelf or trim or capture, whatever you call that. The same treatment is gone from your new elevation.
Correct. So, and I see what happens there is Daniel drew in a line basically showing a separation between just the arch inset with a tile and then the full window area below it. So there's on his elevation, there's no flanking tile next to those windows in the arch. It's just the arch top itself that's infilled with tile. So if that's preferred, we can do that and add, basically take where we're showing now the counter lower, we can either replicate that higher up at the window head height, which would run all the way across all three arches, or we can just simply move it up to that height to basically split the arch into two elements, a rectangular element and a semicircle. Is that what you're looking at?
Then you show some windows in the middle arch. In your drawing, I see a door. Are they right? How many sashes do you have here?
There are just two operable panels.
Windows or doors?
Windows, yeah, because that's the middle landing of the stairwell there. So on our floor plan, there are casement windows that open out, and then there are two panels of those, and then two panels, one on either side of that operable window, that are again those blind glass panels that actually back to the wall.
Well, when I look at your floor plan, there's two. They look like doors. Now I understand they're windows. They're operable windows. But if you put another two sashes to the sides of that, you cannot have real windows. And they're right at the T-junction of the interior wall and exterior wall. So they're fake windows.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
So what is the purpose of those two additional sashes on your real windows?
Again, this was part of the negotiation back and forth trying to match more of the entitlement documents and provide a fairly different graphic element in the middle of one of the arches. When we had just the single window that we had there, it was leaving that elevation a bit blank. So, again, in respect of the entitlement documents and the wish to be as close to those as possible, we're trying to backtrack to make sure that the DRSC is seeing what they saw several years ago. And what you saw several years ago was a wide open bar service in those two arches. That's not possible anymore.
Okay, Chair, we're still in question stage, right? So we can.
Yes, we want to, any questions for the applicant, this is the time to ask them.
Okay, so I leave the comments for later discussion. Thank you.
Okay, and I will ask one question. One of the things that concern me is the simplicity of Spanish Colonial Revival. As we come onto the site, coming down that ramp, you've arrived now down at the level of the patio. You're at the right, you're almost standing in front of the single door that goes into the bowling alley itself, but it's way off ahead of you. As you look back at the this addition, this wing, we've got 3 arches along the front, and then a whole new vocabulary of things on the other wall. Rectangular recesses, and there's no consistency in the vocabulary of bringing the same architecture around the corner. So when we get to that elevation, I just wanted to give you a heads up that I'd like to get your comments on that.
Sure. Are you talking about the west elevation of the addition or the north elevation of the existing bowling alley?
It would be the north elevation.
Okay. Yeah, so in terms of a whole new vocabulary, we're looking at... Yeah.
Let's push pause on that and come back to that just so we can sequentially move through.
That's fine. Sure.
But real quick before we move on, Commissioner Blackwell, did you have anything else to add for initial questions on the 3 arches?
On the 3 arches, well, sounds like we're going to talk about that in more detail later. Again, I'm a big fan of continuity. I agree with the vocabulary matching, but no, I think the arches look very nice. I like the detail. I like the modern feel of the other rectangular lines, but there's definitely some disruption in continuity there, but we'll save that for discussion. I do have some questions to the applicant or Jonathan, if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay. So yes, this one goes back a while now. This project, I'm excited to see this, but I do wonder why we are putting things back where they were originally, when originally there were some challenges with the placement of the bowling alley or the building itself, as it relates to some of the vistas that are there, the views of the ocean. And there was discussion at that time about shifting the entire footprint closer to El Camino Real and opening up the space to the back, to the ocean, the westerly views, and possibly putting in some larger through line of sight, make it more airy. I'm wondering why we ended up with the same location. Why are we going back and putting it right where it was before?
I'll jump in and answer that if you need some help on that one.
Was that a question for me?
whoever can answer. Yeah.
I'll give some initial thoughts, and then Bart, if you want to chime in as well. So there's a couple things at play. Obviously, when we did the entitlements, we didn't do the full review. We've discussed this in the past about the structural integrity of the building, and now we're in a spot where we have recognized that the walls that were in place were so impacted by mold and other issues that those couldn't stay. And yes, if we were designing from scratch today, we would probably be looking at situating something closer to the roadway and tucking other elements behind. The two issues that come up with that, the two primary ones are going to be, one, that would be a major change from the approved site plan that existed or was approved not just by us but by Coastal Commission. So to completely flip the location of the building and the patio area to orient more to the west would give us that, or south, kind of southwest, give us an issue where we would have to go back for an amendment with Coastal Commission. Two, I would have some use concerns where we then have a patio with that's facing a wedding venue. I think that's something that we didn't really evaluate through the initial entitlements, where those sound impacts, et cetera, just were never extensively looked at, because we have a building that's screening off that use from the other existing uses on the other side. So those are just a couple of the things that we would have to dive into and looking to transpose the site plan. So I wouldn't recommend that we look into anything that dramatic, but I'll pass on and see if Bart has any additional comments.
Well, you covered the major issues, and it would also put the project back a minimum of a year and a half. It would have to go through that's a major redo. It would require all our processes being run done. The Coastal Commission, I'm not sure you could maintain the historic character of it where they would qualify for Mills Act. I think it's just too far down the line at this point to even consider that, I think.
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm 100% on board with that statement, but it seems fair enough. And I do appreciate the applicant's desire and energy placed into this. I think that, the orientation of this building has been an issue for a long time. Whether it costs time to get it right, that's to be determined. I'm not saying that this current design is something that I'm not a fan of. I'm just asking the question because it seemed logical that somebody would want to take advantage of an opportunity on a ground up raw land, for the most part construction, to maximize that potential there with proximity to the ocean. So, but what Jonathan mentioned about the adjacent use and weddings, etc., that makes very good sense. And not to say again that this design is necessarily a bad one, or the location of the building. I just was recalling, being a part of this discussion going back years now, that was a concern of at least one of the owners. So anyway, so more questions of staff regarding the Desheka Road there, and what can be done, considering we are moving forward with a stick build. This is a brand new, for the most part, construction project, this part of the property anyway. And one of the concerns that came up during discussions way back when, years ago, was that the right-of-way experience wasn't optimal. In other words, sidewalk widths were challenged. The aesthetic experience there was a big concern, not only to myself but to many others in town. It's just a big blank wall there. So when we start talking about appreciating the neighboring uses, I think that aesthetic would be a big consideration, especially if weddings are going on. You want greatest visibility and backdrop to be as attractive as possible. So was there any consideration to adjusting the location, maybe adjusting it in closer to El Camino Real, perhaps addressing the kiosk size? Because right now we've got an average of, I don't know, what is it, 185 square feet per kiosk. You've got 17, including the bar, basically 17 kiosks that will comprise the various vendors that will come in. An average size of 185 square feet, instead of going with 200 plus square feet on those external kiosks that abut Desheka, why not make those a little bit smaller, or perhaps move the entire building in, say, 5 feet, so we can get the proper widths on the sidewalk. So maybe we can even incorporate some landscape buffering or do something a little more creative with that space, because, again, this is in the North El Camino Real specific plan area. This is one of, if not the most significant property in town. It's definitely one that's, a lot of hope has been behind for many, many years. And so if we're going to do this, and we have this opportunity now, before we were kind of working with what we had, we couldn't do anything with that building. It's gone now. I do not see any point in doing it any other way but the right way. That walkability component along that street is something to be desired. I'm envisioning this building to be built, and it's going to be great. It's going to be a great design. But if we don't do anything about that sidewalk width and that visual experience at this point, we're going to kind of lose our opportunity. So my question again is, has there been any attention to that piece of it? Pushing it back a little, giving us some adequate widths in the sidewalk, and potentially incorporating some space for landscape.
I'll jump in again. I have the same initial concerns, right, that we would be not just affecting like elevations in this case, but grading plans, et cetera, that are pretty far along. My recommendation, though, is that I think that we can have a solution here that's more of a partnership solution, and potentially, this is something that can come up in final, committee comment, but there's going to be a evaluation and a CIP project coming up for the North Beach parking areas generally. And I think that there's already some city interest in looking at, what the public right-of-way space can look like in these areas. And there's also a significant opportunity for some grants now and in the next couple of years for improvements that would correspond with our policy documents, like the Paseos plan, where we can do some implementation there. So I think that would be a discussion of like what's the best route for that. And I think my personal take as staff is that being done through a CIP route would probably be the thing that makes the most sense. That being said, I do know on the elevation piece, we do have a simple wall. It's always been a simple wall, so it's certainly keeping to the history of the building. But if there's elevation elements that that the committee thinks should be added, definitely, like, we can talk about that piece. Again, I would prefer that we have maybe move any discussions of site alterations into maybe final comments or recommendations, just so that we can move through the elevation pieces and go from there. That's my initial take, but
that's great, Jonathan. I appreciate that, but my question remains unanswered. Okay, I'm asking you.
I'm going to jump in right here. We're here to review minor changes to the exterior elevations here. The property has already been approved. They've got their coastal approvals. We don't have, I don't believe, the power to require them to make this a move to this extent, particularly from design review. If council wanted to try to do something, you never know what happens there. But we're here to review the elevation. I think we need to stick to our task. Your comments are made. They're for the record. I think it's far more complicated legally than what you might think it is.
Mike, I would say same as a care. We're responding to the change initiated by the applicant. So I don't think at this moment we can ask them to make drastic change, especially about the siting of the building.
Okay, you want to continue, Jonathan, with the presentation?
Yeah, I'm going to jump back to the report portion so that we can consecutively move through the remainder. The second piece that was listed in that table 1 is, again, the building addition, but now focusing on the piece that faces the courtyard. The elevations from the conceptual are not very clear on this space, so you have to use a little bit of imagination. Tara, if you could go to sheet 2. And while you're transitioning here, I will comment that the exterior walls, that there are not significant changes proposed for those. That's in separate plan sets that I have, but there are not significant alterations proposed to the site walls. Those are just removed so that we can see the buildings more clearly in this case. On the top, you again have the construction drawing on the bottom, the conceptual. So beyond, you can see a green portion. That's a large awning, and there was initially a sit-down counter. Again, there would be a sit-down counter here, and on caddy corner, another pass-through window for the bar that was initially intended for this space. Again, this space is now the back of house for one of the tenant suites, and so having a pass-through doesn't function well with the internal programming. The door that is shown was already shown on that elevation, and then this far right corner piece did not exist initially, but this is something that has come through staff pushing for some level of that inside-outside transition, and so this is a space that has been programmed for a coffee use, so they are able to have a pass-through window. So that's what that third element is on the right side. Again, the initial elevation had a larger sit-down pass-through bar area as well as the door access into it. The new one just has a recessed area, again bringing in the idea of a photo tile motif, a doorway, and then a pass-through to the coffee use. So that's the changes for this piece. Let's see if there's any questions on this piece, and then we'll move to number 3.
Yes, this is the elevation I had mentioned earlier, that we've got this square recess with another art display, I assume, and if right around the corner is an arched one of the same exact thing. And that's where I was concerned we're not being consistent with the styles here. We're adding things that kind of looks like cooker cut and paste a little bit. And I think you need to kind of resolve that inconsistency. And also the doorway, we've got a bunch of different doorway. This double door, I think, is a square recess, but when you come around the other side, I think they're chamfered edges to the recess. I think we need to be consistent throughout with one or the other. That's my only comments on this elevation. And the one thing we had, you haven't raised the ceiling in that part of the building, have you? Because before, I think there was a 42-inch high parapet to the ceiling to hide equipment. But on that front elevation, you've got a type 1 kitchen exhaust coming out that looks like it's an additional 3 feet above the top of the parapet.
No, and actually, just to clarify on that, what you're seeing is a hood that's actually all the way past on the barrel vaulted roof. All the hood and equipment that's on that roof, we haven't changed the ceiling elevation. That parapet's the same.
Okay,
it's all completely hid by that parapet.
Very good, thank you. Jen?
Peter, yes, I have a question. In front of that, recess, On the floor plan, there's a big black shaded area with a big circle. What is that area?
I guess we'd have to look at the site plan to see let's look at the site plan so you can explain which area.
I'm looking at sheet 1D or ID-101B as Bravo.
Okay. Could we actually, it might help if we can all look at that on the screen together. If we go to the site plan.
Which page is that?
It's a 1D or ID-101B.
Yeah, so this area it's what you're seeing, there's a tag on there for that material. It's just a different paving material. Program-wise, that is meant to be where any musical performance or any other presentation might take place. So originally on the plans, there was actually a raised stage there that was raised up, I think, 4 to 8 inches. That had its own issues with access, and we thought it was going to be a tripping hazard with people trying to cut the corner there. So we actually just dropped it down to grade. It looks dark. That's just the hatch pattern that's there.
But if you go to 2 pages later, looking at ID 300B, that shows a table there.
Right. So the idea is if they were going to have a wedding here, you could potentially have like the main bridal party could have a special table there. Really, that area is meant to be something of a presentation area. So whether there's a special table, whether there's a band there, I think there was need, if there was going to be any sort of performance or MC of any kind of event, if the space is booked, to have a more special area that's open. And then thus that's why we didn't put any fountain or anything more intricate on the back side of that, knowing that hopefully that's going to be used up quite often with bands and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Michael, did you have any comments on this elevation?
I don't. Thank you.
Well, Bart, I have comments, but I think we're in.
I meant questions. My mistake.
Okay, so I'll move on to number 3, bowling alley wall facing El Camino Real. This is one that's already been referenced, so there's already been the one comment. We can come back to that during committee discussion as far as consistency. But just to point out the alterations, the primary entry is inset under an arched eyebrow. Oh, sorry, I'm incorrect. I'm giving you the front elevation, so let me jump to that sheet number for Tara. Tara, could you go to just page 2, please? So now we're looking at the primary entry to the bowling alley. The primary entry is inset under the arched eyebrow. The windows on either side are converted into a bifold door on the left and a pass-through counter on the right. There's not substantial changes proposed here, although on the right, there's no longer proposed to be a pass-through counter. It would also be a bifold door. So those would just mimic each other. And just inside that entryway, when you're looking at the floor plan, is more of an open space as you come into that building. I'll leave it there. So there's not substantial changes on this elevation. Are there any questions?
Jonathan, quick question. The accessible ramp, do they stay? Is there any change to the ramp?
No, there's no change to the ramp. That's still in play.
Okay, thank you.
And Jonathan, just so I didn't have the historical review on this, the 2 items that I think they said were the defining features are this elevation, which stays substantially right, and the vaulted roof, correct?
Correct.
Okay, very good.
If there are no other questions, I'm going to jump back to page 1, please, Tara. And I did get myself out of order. Sorry, I just read number 4. So number 3 from the table is this primary wall of the bowling alley that's facing El Camino Real. There were 4 openings, 3 bifold wooden shutter doors and a pass-through counter, and all 4 were covered with fabric awnings, gutters drained into decorative leader boxes. And then the proposed construction plans now show 2 openings for French doors, and then the 2 central door areas that are now backup house, kitchen areas. Those doors are no longer in place, and a different element and exterior attached bar is what's being shown on this elevation. Those are the proposed changes, and we'll move into any questions for Peter.
I'll jump in. This is Bart. The doorway with the side light there was, I think, double doors at one time. It's now a door and a side light window with a wall right down the middle of it, butting into that window. I'm almost thinking that it'd be better off just being a single door. Any comment from the
Sure.
applicant?
Yeah, we actually had our original elevations for all of this much more matched the program and the reality of what's happening on the inside of the building. So some of the elements that you see here are fake. And that larger side light is. We originally had a smaller side light. On city recommendation, expanded it to look more like a double door, which means that it could no longer be able to be functional and glass. It would have to be blank with one functional door. So,
yeah, I appreciate that, trying to keep it consistent, but I think
certainly can go back to a single door with an awning if that's preferred.
Jen, do you have any comments?
Yeah, the large, I don't know if I should call it a door or window, it looks like one, to the left of the right French door. What is that? Can you explain to me? Because I don't, it looks like a recess again. It's a fake with the, if I understand it correctly, it's a tile work on top, then some image at the bottom. Is that true?
Yeah, that's actually the exterior bar. So the white blank space you're looking at the bottom is actually the face of bar, the bar die wall. There's a tile backing for the bar back, and it's got an awning over the top.
Oh, okay.
So that whole unit is the exterior bar.
So we're not looking at the building. That's a bar, okay. And then with the background, and there's an awning over the bar.
Yeah, over the back bar, correct.
Okay.
Any other questions on this elevation, or I'll move to the next one?
Yeah, a quick one. Looking at the, and I think what might help is on the floor plan, and it's actually the only floor plan we have is the finished plan scheduled for level 1. Am I correct that there is a fountain to the right of that little planter niche in the wall?
No, that may not have been updated on the interior design plans, but no, that fountain is gone. We're not going to be including that.
Okay, it shows on ID 101B. Okay.
Yeah, apologies. That was eliminated.
Okay, I'll move into the next section.
Wait. I do have a question. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Michael.
On that elevation, and many of the elevations, can you touch on the roof material? for the large area? What is
Sure.
the?
Sure. So
that?
we're going with exactly what was shown in entitlement. He showed a 3-layer BUR with integral color. It was basically just an asphalt material. So we're going to go with exactly the same thing.
Okay. And again, why are we going with tile, which would be consistent with what we look for, especially in this area? Maybe that's a Jonathan question.
Well, it's not historic. What they're using is the historic roofing for this building.
Right, but we can also replace it with something consistent with that era, right?
No.
No? Yes, we can.
Not
Says
because
who?
it's historically correct.
Says who? I don't
Says
agree
all
with
the
that at all.
guidelines, all the guidelines at every single conference I've been to on historic preservation, you try to keep materials as consistent as possible.
Right, but when there's opportunity to improve, but
I'm not sure that's an
consistent
improvement.
with the intent of the architecture, right? We're using tile in some areas, right? And we've asked for tile in other projects in this area. Why wouldn't we do that here? Is
Well,
cost an issue?
Well, no, it's kind of the same thing. No, it's kind of the same thing as saying, why don't we put wood siding on it?
Well,
I mean, you're changing materials.
well, it's intent, and it's a brand new construction project, right? For the most part, and we're trying to, make it.
It's a historic preservation. We've got to look at it that way. Yes, it's new construction, but we got to keep it as historic as possible, or he's not going to get his entitlements for the Mills Act.
I think that I do appreciate that, Bart, but I also am not completely on board with not being able to do certain things. And so I'm just thinking about not to, throw the monkey wrench in the works here, just, the whole point of this meeting right now. And I guess I'm not clear on exactly what tidbits we're actually looking at, because I'm looking at this whole project, and, I got my packet like 2 days ago in the mail, the hard copies anyway. So I'm spending time looking at this, and, we have an opportunity here to talk about design elements. The building with or without a proper tile roof. I mean, that was clearly a cost savings endeavor, or whatever it was. I mean, the roof material has always been a point of discussion in the city. And a recent project nearby, we restored another building. Cost was an issue, structural integrity, so we kind of were flexible on that. But in this case, it's brand new construction. So I don't know. I don't want to digress a whole lot, but I'm having some discomfort with some of the things that we can and cannot talk about, because I don't clearly understand that, only because I've been involved.
He's entitled to have this roof. It's a done deal. He's entitled to have it.
Then why are we talking about any of the openings, any of the placement of walkways, any of it? Right?
He's asking for exceptions. We're not asking for exceptions. He's asking for exceptions.
Can we move on to the question first before we can discuss?
Well, let's go to the next. Yeah.
That was my question. It was answered. Thank you.
Hey, Jonathan, this is James. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in real quick. I just want everybody to know we're doing things based on the entitlements. Nothing that we're doing has been in any way done from a cost-saving measure on this project. We're, candidly, we're sort of sparing no expense, even with some of the delays that we've had. But we're replacing things sort of as the entitlements called for, and that's the reason it's being done.
Thank you. Okay, Jonathan, you've got the floor again.
Okay, so in the patio area, this is number 5 on the table from the staff report. The south edge of the patio area includes a performance stage and a fireplace. The main structure is a large wooden patio cover, and the edge seating areas are shaded by umbrellas. And then if we can go to sheet number 5, please, Tara. Now the performance stage was removed as a standalone element, although as Peter has noted, there's a different at-grade area that's intended to replace that. And the fireplace is being relocated to the side of the patio cover, which has been expanded. The edge seating areas are now shaded by smaller latticed patio covers. So this would reflect the main one, but obviously just a smaller size. I did already comment, one of the things that I don't have enough detail in the plans currently is the fireplace was shown to be removed or relocated, but I don't have a detail of that in the plans yet. So that's something that I've already indicated, and that's in one of my recommendations, that if we're relocating that element, it was a focal piece of the original review and kind of a standout architectural piece of that patio. So we would want that to be reflected, even if it is being relocated. We still would want that to be something that is kind of an iconic piece in that central area. So those are the changes in the patio. Let's see if there's any follow-up questions there before we move to our final one.
I have no questions. Michael, do you have any questions on that?
I don't. Thank you.
Jen?
I don't.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay, we'll move to the final, which is the rooftop vents, and that's already been something that we've looked at a bit. If we could go back to sheet number 1, Tara. So the rooftop vents are visible on the south portion of the roof initially and indicated to be painted red. A note from the original entitlements indicated that the city planner shall make a substantial conformance determination. So it seems that there was some recognition that the roof venting had not been fully thought out at that point. Again, that predates my time with this project, but I wanted to share that one note. Currently, as you can see on these elevations, there are roof vents that are visible on this elevation. There is an increase as well in the number of tenants, so that does contribute. Venting is not my specialty though, so I'm going to defer to Peter on any questions about ways that can be potentially mitigated. My one concern would be that typically we would look at, can a parapet be put in place, but as has been noted already, the barrel or vaulted nature of this roof is something that is a significant piece of the original outlay of this building. So we do want to keep the general barrel shape visible to the public. Other than that, I think that this is going to be something that during discussion we would look for some direction on how to best mitigate that element. But are there any questions?
Yes. Back in 2016, we got a document, let's see what here, on the event center. It was part of the approval process. Page 24 is rehabilitation of the theater complex project, and it's a major discussion on rooftop vents. And under general notes, it says roof-mounted equipment is not to exceed those depicted on the approved plans presented to the Planning Commission. Initial approval concerning, well, I'll make this shorter. Basically, they are saying that all vents shall be located on the west side. And that is in the entitlement documents, etc. Now, the ones that are the biggest problem are the type 1 vents, which are usually grease hoods and whatnot. And depending on their layout, multiple hoods can go through a common vent. Mechanical will allow that. You got to design to it. And it also required that all cleanouts for the venting system be done from inside, not from roof vent. So we can make recommendations, but we can't wipe a magic wand and make those entitlements go away. So does the applicant have a solution, or have they reviewed how many type 1, type 2 vents there are going to be, how many can be paired together or multiple? And this is where I'm also concerned about what's happening inside for the exposed roof trusses.
Yeah, so let me answer that. We've spent over the last year quite a long time talking about these vents, so certainly something we take seriously. On the entitlement documents here, there is shown a 24-inch protrusion above the ridge line of the building, which we've actually beat. We are below what the entitlement documents allowed for visibility of vents above the ridge of the building. Now, some of them are required to be on the north side. Again, because of program, we had a floor plan that was put in place before this owner and certainly before this program. In terms of combining vents, we do have all the existing historic trusses in the building put back in there, exposed and highlighted with lighting to show off these beautiful vents. With combining vents, you have some major issues. One of them is the maximum allowed run at an angle, basically, of that vent. And also, it would cut through the trusses. Trying to combine hoods any more than we have in this case would mean you would have ducts running not just through the middle for air supply, but you would have ducts going all through the trusses on the sides. So what we came up with as a mechanical strategy was moving all the mechanical equipment inside the building above the kiosks themselves, so they're invisible from the outside. That means all inline fans. We've gone with a very bare minimum of exhaust outlets, basically, on top of the building, and push the edge of curb right down on the high side of that barrel vault as low as you can. So looking at this elevation, you can see we've barely come up above the ridge line of the building. Short of eliminating all the kiosks on the north side of the building, there's no practical way to cross the building with hoods, and nor would you want to obscure the view of your beautiful historic trusses with exhaust ducting that would then run north to south inside the building to vent them to the south. So the other thing we've done too was we eliminated all makeup air from the roof entirely. Our whole makeup air strategy, it's not coming from the side of the building. In the space, the wedge between the two buildings is basically our mechanical yard. So that makeup air unit is screened there, and all the makeup air is being pushed into the space from the east side of the building. So what could have been twice as many hoods if you had added in makeup air and air inlets for that has been minimized as much as possible. The strategy that you see now with hoods, besides painting them out, the other option for your committee to consider is putting a parapet on to try to screen all of them if you really don't want to see them. As you can see with the location of the hoods, that parapet would have to come all the way to just about the ridge line of the building. So you would lose the visibility of the barrel vault. So I think that's really a choice I would leave up to your group to decide whether you want to try to hide them behind a wall or paint them out to try to match this. The other option is removing all the kiosks inside the building and not having exhaust hoods, but I think that was never a part of the intent of the entitlement or of this project when it was put into place. So this is about as good as it gets for exhaust hoods. They're not my favorite thing either, just like backflow preventers. They tend to be the thing last considered, and we consider them first on this project.
Can you at least combine numerous type 2 vents?
We don't have any type 2 hoods on this project. They're all type 1. Because we can't guarantee with any of the kiosks that they can go with type 2. So all of them have to be type 1, and the hood type, the exhaust vent type is going to be the same.
Yeah, I mean, an example, a Subway sandwich doesn't need a type 1 hood.
Correct, because they're not doing any cooking with grease. They're baking elements only. Because of the variety of tenants inside each kiosk, we cannot limit them to either type 2 or type 1, or to type 2 or less, because that completely changes the menu. So for the flexibility of tenanting the spaces, they do all have to be type 1.
So you're planning a type 1 for every single kiosk?
Except the one that Jonathan pointed out in the re-entrant corner of the building is a coffee shop. There's no hood at all there.
Is there any way to plan for it but not install it until you get a tenant that needs it?
That would be a question for the building owners.
Hey, this is Mo. Is this just in reference to the one stall without a hood?
No, this is in, in a lot of cases on projects, we've got to provide sleeves and whatnot for solar or in places and all. Whether it's installed or not, that's not the issue in the old days. So is it possible that until you get a tenant that requires a Type 2 hood, that just the sleeving for it would be installed? So we don't have non-functioning vents on the roof, just ones that are being used by the tenants?
James, do you want to hop in on this one?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I mean, when you do a food hall, I mean, part of the economic viability of, projects like this is to have your space rented. So when I did the Windmill Food Hall, I had all of my spaces rented with menus in place, approved through the health department, et cetera, 6 months, before we opened. And we are actively in the process right now and have already secured half of the tenants. And we fully anticipate having the others secured as well. You brought up the Subway sandwich thing. There is certain equipment out there, certain ovens, Turbo Chef, and there's other ones that are ventless. The only problem is, they have exemptions from the health department, building departments, but your menu ends up being exceptionally limited. So I understand what you're asking. However, we plan on having the entire food hall fully leased, at least 2 months before we open.
This is Zhang.
Yes,
On the roof, there was some low-profile skylights. Do you still have them?
Yes. Yeah, so you can see the locations there on our drawing actually match the entitlement drawings. We still have those skylights in
For
place.
the vents, is it possible to create a well and a vent from within the well?
That does not appear to our side to match the entitlement drawings. Looking at the shape of the barrel vault, again, and I might bounce that question back to you all, but creating multiple small wells inside that roof, given that Camino Real looks slightly down on this project, you would be looking into those wells. So I guess the question is to maintain the integrity of that roof line. You could put all these exhaust vents in a well, but the well would be most of the roof, given the clear space that you need for air circulation around each vent.
Okay. Well,
Can somebody mute their line? We're getting a lot of feedback. Thank you.
Okay, good. I also noticed that on the elevation that's facing the ocean, there are some changes on the window. You have a bar, then at the normal background wall location, you have 2 windows, and they're operable windows. Can you confirm that's your plan?
Yes, correct. Because of how close the building is to the property line and to the right-of-way there, the original scheme actually had windows that would have gone into the public right-of-way. So as casements, once they opened up, would have been a hazard. So we did have to split them into multiple smaller operable panes, but the idea is to have, yes, in the bar, operable windows looking out to the south.
Okay, so you don't have a background, a shelf, etc., but you have a real window there.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, any comments?
Just on the vents, just to clarify, these vents were not part of the original entitlement, correct?
Not
the one we were talking about.
The, north on the east side.
Not on El Camino Real visible side.
Yeah. Okay. And Jonathan, are we thoroughly convinced that there are no other viable options that could eliminate these? I think they're visually obtrusive, but it sounds like it's unavoidable. Are we 100% confident there are no other design options that would help minimize that impact, aesthetic impact?
Good question. In this case, I would rely more on Bart's expertise and Peter's, because I just don't have good knowledge about venting and the options of handling that mechanically. But one of the things as we move into comments, since we are in this unfortunate temporary format of doing everything by video, I would like to maybe get, as we talk through these different pieces, if you as the committee members wouldn't mind maybe even marking your comments on the site plans that you have. And so, for instance, if you have ideas, again, Bart, especially with the background knowing what potential options there are out there, if you wouldn't mind marking up the plans, and then I can even gather those to be a more effective, direct relay of your thoughts and comments back to the architect. Given that we can't sit around the table together, I think that might be a good way to make sure that we get those all incorporated.
Okay, and that is one of the flaws in the remote meetings, for sure. We don't get an opportunity to really work together.
Jonathan, I have another question about the site. The applicant is asking to add about 18 more seats total. So they're asking for more parking waiver, is that right?
So that's something I put in my recommendations. The original plans indicated 200 total seats. They have to keep it to 200 total seats. So we're, yes, I counted more than 200. That just has to be adjusted. And I did relay, and Peter knows that on the next building submittal, as a part of the title sheet, will reflect that 200 is the maximum seating allowance, because that doesn't just affect us here at Design. That was one of the primary issues and concerns with one, that required city council approval, and then two, was a topic of review by the Coastal Commission. So we're not going to be flexible on the total seat count.
Okay, thank you. It's going to take a lot more time to go over that process again, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Okay, have we gone through everything you wanted to discuss, or at least present, Jonathan?
Yes, that wraps up all of those alteration items from the table. So if we want to transition now to comments, and I'll take the best notes that I can, but again, if you would all do me the enormous favor of marking up your plans, that would help me consolidate and make sure that I'm not missing anything.
Okay, very good. We will close the presentation portion, open to public comment. Do we have any letters, comments, or emails that should be read into the record?
No, I have not received any. Stephanie, did you receive any at the Planning General mailbox?
No, we have not received any public comments either.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will close the public comment portion and open it up for discussion. And probably the best way to do this. We'll just have each person talk on the items that they think are important. And could you tell me the impact, real quick, and I should have asked this, but as far as catering to the theater building, There's always been an elevator going from the downstairs catering area and out, and from a direct door out from the kitchen that was in the second floor. Has that been diminished any, or is it just as functional as it was previously? And that's a question to Peter.
Yes, so the elevator is still there. Originally, there were 2 elevators in the space. There was going to be more public use in the basement. Given the DEH requirements for all these kiosks, the amount of storage has overtaken most of the basement. But there is planned to be a future catering kitchen down there with an elevator that goes directly up. It's more in the southeast corner of the building, so it's actually slightly closer to the theater. With direct access out, it's actually covered, going under that mechanical roof, and goes right into the back of the event space in the theater.
Because the only way to get handicap down to the bathrooms, which I assume are in the basement since we don't have any drawings of that, is down the catering elevator. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we have an elevator in our plans. You can see on the ground floor, it's actually double-sided. It's front and back doors on both floors. When you take the elevator down, for the public, it actually leads through to a hallway that takes you around to the restrooms in the back. And then staff would use the back door of the elevator to go into their storage area.
So they do share the elevator. It's not 2 cars.
Correct. It's 1 car. We imagine it's going to be 99% use by staff.
Well, anybody on crutches or wheelchairs are going to have to share that elevator, apparently. Just a concern that it's not an item that's being discussed today. Okay, Jen, would you like to start discussion?
Yeah, okay, so I go over my comments. Overall, I believe this revision is driven by the functional consideration, practical reasons. I understand it, but the design overall has lost a little bit of the original design. Simplicity, the Spanish colonial architecture flavor, and the outdoor-indoor relationship thing. Pretty much because the applicant is trying to squeeze as many as vendors inside the building, it makes all this kiosk exterior door basically a back of house spaces. So there's as a result, some windows or openings are eliminated. So the connection between the courtyard and the indoor space has been lost somewhat. And then there's a few niches, and they're fake windows. So it also lost a little bit authenticity or authenticity of the design. Because we want, the applicant is trying to keep the original design as much as possible, but the interior function has been changed. So sometimes they don't match. On the area 1, nearby the 3 arches, I think for the central arch, there are 2 side panels of the window, and they're completely unnecessary. I recommend removing them. And I also recommend lowering the arch spring point to match as much as possible to the original design. That gives a little more wall space. And that's the hallmark of Spanish architecture, because you don't need a big window when you don't need them. So the windows are mostly vertical and smaller. So that's on that portion of the elevation. Come around the corner, I don't have much comments on the other side of this corner. The tower used to accommodate the elevator and a staircase. Now the staircase has been relocated, but the elevator is still there. So I guess I can accept that. But when you come around the corner, you have another niche, which has a flat top, inconsistent with what you have on the other side of the corner. That doesn't look right. So that's area 2 and then go to area 3, that main west elevation of the bowling alley, I don't have much comments on that. Going to the long elevation facing El Camino Real, the biggest comments is, well, it goes to number 5. The vents. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 vents. Well, there's 8 there. There's 9 on the addition. Those vents popped up like mushrooms, and there are as many vents as on the south side. On the other side, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so you have 8 vents on each side, not including anything that's blocked by the tower. Maybe there's another one. I don't see it. But that's almost too much. I don't have a good solution for that. But my feeling is that distracts the people's attention from the original design, which we approved, and kind of the layout, the change of the layout of the courtyard also degraded the overall experience of that courtyard, I would say. With the diminished interior-exterior relationship, the connection, the physical connection and the visual connection. The applicant has taken out some indoor seats, which could be usable during some weather conditions. But now, almost predominantly, the seats are in the courtyard. Since the applicant will be asked to reduce the seats down, so I wonder if that's possible for the applicant to look at the number of kiosks interior again, maybe reduce some, or maybe put some seats back into the inside, which will make those windows more natural and authentic, and people can have some visual connection to the ocean. Right now there's when you walk into the building, it's pretty much interior. There's a little bit of skylight on top, but there's very minimal exterior doors and windows. I'm not sure I'm a fan of that interior environment. So that's my overall comment, and I may have to accept those comments, but it's I'm not very excited about these changes. That's all for now.
Okay, Jim, before I go on to Michael, Jonathan, what you're shooting for is to get this down to the zoning administrator, correct?
One second, bring my video back on. There we go. Ideally, because we're at like third stage of grading plan, is that we get specific comments as much as possible from design review, get those incorporated, and then move forward with an administrative approval. That's the ideal situation, but we'll see what the scope of the comments are from design review.
I mean, I can see architectural things and all, but because both Planning Commission and City Council approved the general notes that there would be no vents on anything but the west side, I would be hard-pressed to, on that one item alone, to send it to ZA and not through Commission and Council. I know I saw the little blurb of, who reviews minor changes and all, and I think we can solve all those issues. But we'll continue discussion and see where that goes.
Sure.
Okay, Michael.
Yes. Thank you. Am I on?
Yes, you are.
So on the north and south elevations, I share the concern with events. I see 5 kiosks on each side that look, substantial enough to accommodate, a generalized application. You don't know who the tenant's going to be, and you want to be able to make it accommodating. And it's got a pencil from a real estate marketability perspective, and I'm very sensitive to that. And first of all, I should have said that I'm very happy to see this happening, and I want to applaud the applicant and express my personal appreciation for the efforts here. And I'm getting the feeling in the brief discussions today with the representative that there's an intent to do the right thing and to do what it takes given the the resources and tools available. And I'm very sensitive to the progression, the grading piece of it. But I want to remind everybody this is not our fault, but our responsibility is, again, taking my own time, like all of us here, to focus on a project and make it the best we can. Again, not on board with the tile, not being there on the roof. That is a discussion that will maybe not continue on. Fine. The vents are a big deal, and so along the same line of logic, if one thing was approved before, and we can't change it now, if we're going to add new elements that are arguably significant and could potentially change the overall character and look, I think it's worthy of further discussion. Whether it goes to Planning Commission, my desire is to see a good project here. I think that we could, instead of relying on the design review subcommittee members for that sort of intel, though, acknowledging that we do have 2 architects here. Myself, I've been in development for a very long time too. I don't know it all, and certainly not as much about current materials that are available to us in construction design, but I know it's always changing. I'm not comfortable with staff's response on that. To rely on Bart, with all due respect, I highly respect Bart and his knowledge in architecture and history and wisdom there, but I think it's worth looking at a little bit closer to see if there are other options, just to make sure we're getting everything that we can here. Whether it goes to public hearing or not, I would agree that this did go through that channel previously, and if we're adding new elements, I think it's worthy of a similar process. I think, in all fairness, the public should know what is changing, especially if there are elements that are going to be highly visible. This is our, I'm very protective of this area. It's our North Gateway. It's along El Camino Real. Again, not to diminish what's happening here. I think this is amazing, and it could be a little bit better. And I think it's worth looking into that. Maybe it's another meeting like this that we have. With all respect to timelines, so maybe sooner rather than later. But I just do think that there could be more done here. Interior space, you could shave off 35 square feet, 35, move some things over, make some more accommodations in the right-of-way, whether it's different windows, some landscape, these things. If we absolutely cannot change that at this point, then fine. I'm not comfortable with it. I think that more can be done. And if it's only the roof venting, then maybe we just bring it back to design this committee to look at again. I want to help the applicant, and I want to do what we're asked to do, and that's to review this from a design perspective, come up with comments and suggestions, and hope for the best. And that would probably be my blanket comment to the rest of any elevation and discussion on this. I like the rest of the project. I like the floor plan. Moving the building aside, reducing footprint interior aside. I think it's great. I think I personally would like to see the patio facing the ocean, but hey, this design is fine. And but I do think it warrants further consideration, especially on the roof vents. Thank you.
Okay, and I'll jump in now and say that what we're doing here is making recommendations. We can't require anything other than give our best impression of what the decision would be at the next level. And try to make it as easy for you to bring the application to a point where it can be approved by whatever body ends up being the final approving body. Couple of questions and we'll start just like Jen did and go from the first drawing that we had, which is what would it be? The east elevation with the unit with the 3 arches. With how strange it seems there, I'm almost thinking, and I accept some comment from Stephen. If we went to 2 arches on the left-hand side, just like we originally had, and if you really wanted to get some light to the stairwell, you could use a skylight. I mean, that thing, you look through it when you go down the first risers, but then once you get down to the landing, they're, I don't know, what, 12 feet above you or whatever it would be. That might be something to consider, and that would relieve my concern somewhat about that corner not being the same kind of treatment wrapping around the corner and down that wall. That would be more in keeping with what's there currently. Is that a demand? Absolutely not. That's just a recommendation. I'm fine with going to the single door. I realize it's a change and all. I think it's a little more honest. And you've got the beveled edge trim around that one, which is also on the space behind the entertainment area. And I think any recess then on that wall, since you've already furred it out, should probably be a consistent type of trim. If you're going to bevel, if you're going to go square, but not have one and then one without, and then one with, and then one without. Try to be consistent. And then this little wrought iron planter thing on the wall seems a little token, but I know there was something there before. I think it was a window. So, you know, if you can come up with something that's a little more interesting, that'd be great. If not, so be it. On the if it becomes a real issue as far as the roof vents that are a major problem, I'm on your ID sheet floor plan. I totally understand what you did to put the bar with bench seating that can look out those windows towards the ocean. And Michael's made a good point that, you know, that is the best view. But if there's no other solution to the vents on the west side, it seems like it would be pretty easy to flip that whole core over, and you would bring at least one of the vents, if not 2, to the west side. That's just a way out if it comes to that. And I think, and there's certainly some spaces that I'm looking at it that spaces 14, 13, 15, 12, 5, 11 can probably all come out the flat roof for their venting. So that eliminates 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of 14 vents right now. Won't be on the barrel, so that'd be 9 left. So there should only be 4 on each side. So I would hope that you give a little more justification for why this. I mean, is this absolutely where those vents would be, or is it just a shot at it? Because whoever makes the final decision is going to want to have backup. That, you know, this is how it is. That, I mean, could we put 2 together on adjoining spaces? Well, technically you could, depending on where the vent is planned to be, and I don't know that. The other thing, for historic issues and the fact that the main entry to the building, that elevation is important historically, and the trusses are historic, and they can only carry so much load. So I'm pretty sure that they were never designed for tile roofs. So you've got a roof approved. But I'd love to see, Jonathan, how those trusses are being exposed, how high the interior walls actually go. We've got a plate of 13 foot, I believe, to the bottom of the truss, the bottom quarter trusses. So if they're 8 foot plus, we were saying there's going to be some mechanical on top of each of those kiosks, that there's got to be a depth of space. So is that going to plate height right to the bottom quarter truss, or is it stopping below? That would be something that we should be able to review to make sure that, in fact, they are sensitive what Historic Society and all beat into the committee as far as saving these buildings. It was a long, long process to get through, and I want to make sure we don't make a one meeting change to something that we spent months and months and months on.
Yeah.
So Jonathan, if we mark these up of what our comments are, they have their tentative shell in the building department now, is that correct?
Correct. Well, it's being, I believe Peter can comment, being resubmitted. They've gone through 2 rounds of review, so they'll be resubmitting shortly. I believe that the grading plan is the first one that's coming in. I know that they sent the electronic versions of that today. The rest, I believe, will be submitted shortly for the next round of review.
Okay. Framing is a ways off because they got to build this foundation and basement. Is that correct, Peter?
Correct. Because of the building siting so close to the road, we're having to do a lot of shoring on all the west, south, and east sides are all extensive shoring. So there is a fair amount of time before we get out of the ground with framing.
Okay, so Jonathan, I just want to make sure we don't rush this through haphazardly. I'd like to see what these changes are. I'd like to see an inventory of what vents can be put into the flat roof area versus into the barrel roof. And but the site plan, Jen, I'd like to get your comment. The site plan has changed a little bit, and you were saying the impact isn't quite as what it used to be. We've got two entries, the one off of the Pico corner doesn't change much. The one off of El Camino Real comes in and immediately comes in front of a table. And then I understand the bicycle racks are all on the back side of the ramp. So other than bikers or ADA, not many people are going to be walking by that elevation. Is that correct, Stephen? Is that the way you anticipated?
Sorry, is that a question for me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We think most people are actually going to be coming from the southwest of this site, from parking there or train or the beach area.
Okay. Those are my comments. Michael and Jen, are you both comfortable with marking up your plans for Jonathan so he can put together a cohesive response to the project team?
Absolutely. If we can get some timelines on that, the expectation for return, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I can do that. Jonathan, if you can send me, I don't know if this 11 by 17 sheets are part of the PDF file. I'd like to print out another set of it for my markup.
Yeah, I've kind of scribbled on my 11 by 17, so I'm probably going to use the full-size set to mark up.
Sure, I'll send everyone the PDF version as well. If anyone has a preference to do comments in PDF, that would be just as functional for me, whatever you prefer.
Okay.
Yeah, I mark up the PDF printouts and then scan and then return them back to you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and I want to give the project team one more chance to make any comment, their closing comment. We're here to work with you. We're not working against you. But we, some of us, I went through the whole process of getting that first one approved. And I know what the public comments were and the Historic Society comments were, and it was a pretty hot ticket item. So I want to make sure we do this right and make sure you are made aware and given everything ahead of time so you're prepared.
Yeah, this is one of the most important projects in Northeast revitalization. And we're all very much invested in that, and we would like to see this project come to fruition. So yeah, we're here to help you.
Well, that's much appreciated. Thank you, and I certainly thank you for your time to be so diligent looking through this. You know, specifically about the design elements and the elevations. On the design team, our preference would always be to be more honest. We know that these entitlement drawings were done a very long time ago with a different client, with a different program, different use, and different floor plan. So as much as we can be honest to what's actually happening with the program and simplify and make more cohesive those design elements, we're very happy to do that. And again, whatever we can do to pave the way that for approval, I know our clients would be happy about that.
Very good.
Peter, if I can ask one quick question. I don't believe, I just don't have, obviously the building sets in front of me right now since they haven't been resubmitted yet, but I don't believe that the vents were a part of the shell. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. So we have, and some of the confusion to the committee might be that we have two separate sets here. One is shell, which is literally just the building structure, cold shell. The other one is the TI. So a lot of the TI, all the exterior improvements, lightings, awnings, and mechanical with hoods and exhaust vents are all part of the TI set.
So that being said, my goal on staff, trying to find the good balance of being expedient while also making sure that we don't cut corners on design, is to move forward with the shell at an administrative level if possible. Again, we'll look at what the comments come back, because I'm gonna have to look at the alignment of the shell versus the TI elements. But if we can get into a spot with the shell where that can move forward, then potentially the applicants can wrap up the grading and shell portion of the project, where then the timeline of finalizing vents and other details is not going to be as much of a concern. I think that that's going to be what I attempt to do. Is there any feedback from you, Peter, on something like that? And then from design review, if you have any concerns about that, let me know.
Well,
Sure.
that's the appropriate way to go.
Yeah, and what we can do, since we are furring out that wall, other than the actual openings in the basic exterior wall, where we've got doors and windows and we know those are going to need to be a part of the shell, we're fine with actually having the furred out wall, and any improvements, whether there are chamfered reveals or squared off reveals, awnings, changes in all those exterior elements, if that can be pushed to the TI set, that would certainly help us try to meet our clients' need to get permits issued and at least get this building out of the ground, knowing that the doors and windows are not likely to change location based on the program. That would be fantastic.
My comment regarding the number of events, especially on the El Camino Real side, is that I'd like to see some efforts to minimize the number of those events. It's nice to have the type 1 for every tenant, but realistically, based on your experience, you know that a certain percentage of those vendors, they don't need that. So you don't get an optimum availability for each of them down the line, but at least at the beginning, someone comes in, you have someone without type 1, you have some space with type 1, and you can allocate them to certain spaces, and that will reduce, and plus you can combine some of them possibly. And Bart also recommends you to see if it's technically feasible to move some of them to the flat roof area. And really, I think I'd like to see the number of vents on this side to be minimized.
Yes, and we're happy to look at that further. Having done commissary kitchens and other food halls, one of the big issues with combining exhaust is that means that you might have multiple hoods running where there's no need for it. So tenants may not want their hood to be on if you're trying to gang them up to a single exhaust. But we'll look at some other solutions and see potentially if there's any other way to try to minimize that, or even run some to the south, and then provide kind of a sort of visual cost benefit.
Yeah, you may have a coffee shop there, right? And they don't need the grid to deal with that, right?
Very good. Okay, Michael, would you like to make a closing comment?
Yes, I would. Again, thanking the applicant for bringing it this far. Great comments. Just same thing. Concerned with events. Just one thing we need to think about is we run out of options on vents. One solution to minimize the visibility on the ceiling or on the roof would be to put it, through the walls, which I don't know if that would be any better considering how close those vents would be to people. And so it might be a no-win situation with the vents. They're necessary, but agree. If we can minimize the number of them, perhaps, that's a give back. Placement and the style, maybe the product type, maybe a lower profile. Every reasonable effort should be made. We need the vents, so they've got to go somewhere. Just coming in with the absolute minimum, but we should be very sensitive to the applicant's need for occupancy, and taking away too much could severely limit the marketability of that space. So, I think we're all sensitive to that, but just minimizing this to the greatest extent, that is reasonable, and that's what would work here. And again, justifying that, as Bart had mentioned, whatever final decision-making body, wherever this lands, that backup is going to be important. So with that said, I'm looking forward to seeing this great project moving forward.
Hey, Mike, I like your idea. I just don't know if it works or not, and venture through the wall.
Well, it can be done. It can be done.
I know it can be done for my kitchen, but commercial kitchen, I don't know. Peter, you may have a better idea.
No, I don't think you can do a type 1 vent out of the wall. They're too low. You don't want to be bringing the odors directly into the patio.
Right.
Just too many drawbacks, and they're ugly. They're noisy. They got to be maintained. They got to be cleaned. They're a pain in the rear is what they are. But they serve a necessary purpose.
Then the roof it is.
Yeah.
Found a good solution on the roof.
Very good. Jonathan, I want to thank you for putting this together, and we'll mark up our drawings and get them to you to kind of codify what we talked about today. Peter, I think you guys have done a good job. Just a little more sensitivity to consistency on detail and all. I know you were in a rush, I'm sure, to pump this thing out. That's what architects do. Everything's a deadline. And your project team, it looks like they've all signed off, but thank them for give them our thanks for joining us. And we are here to find a solution and get this thing going.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Art, I have a question for Jonathan. Jonathan, what is your expected return time on our markups? When would you like to see these? I got everything in a schedule now. I have to stay on point here.
You know, as soon as possible, obviously. You know, I'm trying to turn things around for the project team as quickly as I can. I did take some detailed notes while we were discussing, so I'll relay those today. But you know, we're at Wednesday today. It is a dark Friday for the city. Peter, I mean, maybe you can chime in on this as well. Monday would give at least, you know, the weekend. Is that feasible for people to potentially return things by the 19th?
Yeah, that's fine, especially if we're looking at a strategy of potentially carving off a lot of the design decisions and modifications, especially regarding codes to the TI set anyway. We certainly have time and want to make sure that you all have enough time to mark it up, review it, scan it, get it back. That's no problem at all.
Okay, so the 19th it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Peter.
Yes, thank you very much yourself. Much appreciated.
Next item 5, oral and written communications. I know of none. Stephanie or Justin, are there any written communications?
No, we haven't received any additional communications that on non-agendized items.
Okay, very good. Then I will request a motion for adjournment.
I move to adjourn the meeting. The next regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee will be held Wednesday, October 28, 2020 at 4 p.m. via teleconference. The September 23rd, 2020 meeting was previously canceled.
I'll do a second on that.
Motion by Wu, second by Blackwell. We'll call a vote. Jen?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I will also say aye. So thank you very much. We didn't keep Stephanie up too late. And thank you, Jonathan, for